Prayer Made Simple and Joyful is a three-part series offering an approach to prayer based on gospel principles. Hosting our program is Father John Catoir, and now, Part 2, Giving Yourself to God in the Present Moment with Father Catoir.
Well, it's good to have you back, and it's good to talk to you about your prayer life, because I want so much for you to believe truly that pure prayer is in the will to give yourself to God, which means you're praying very well. The Lord doesn't stand on ceremony about giving you a mark for your sincerity. Any effort to give yourself to God as best you can, even if you feel that it's not complete, is still a beautiful prayer. And so we've talked about pure prayer is in the will. We've talked about distractions and about feelings that are inadequate in such a way as to say that we shouldn't be too disturbed about them. Just laugh at them, brush them aside, and remember that it's still authentic self-giving even when the feelings are not there. It will help you a great deal to respect the fact that you are praying well. And the Lord loves you very much for every effort. He goes out more than halfway to meet you. He goes all the way. You are enfolded in His love at all times. Now, in this tape, I'd like to bring you to what is basically one of the fundamental, solid foundations of the spiritual life. It was expressed well by a 17th century Jesuit named Jean-Pierre de Caussade. And what he said was that in his book, Abandonment to Divine Providence, was this: union with God and the secret of happiness and sanctity rests in our fidelity to the will of God as it is manifested in the duty of the present moment. That's a big sentence. Let me simplify it. Living in the present moment is the only time that we have in our prayer life. If you're thinking about the past, you're not giving yourself to God in focus. If you're worried about the future, your thoughts are straying a little bit. So there is an effort to be made to try to be present to what you're doing. Now, while I said that these distractions, past and future, are not significant, the fact is, as we progress in prayer, for your own sake, if you are to do what we are going to discuss in the third tape, that is to freshen your prayer with joy, to lift up your heart with a new confidence in a spirit of joy, then there's a need to close down the past in such a way so that it will not invade the present moment. In other words, don't let the past drag you down. It could be anything. Worrying about sinfulness, it could be grief, it could be mistakes that you made that you feel are terrible and make you unworthy. And then the other corollary is, don't let the future, the fear of the future, so disturb your psyche that in the present moment you're completely at ends. So there is a certain discipline involved, but in the effort to arrive at this pure perfection that I'm speaking about, I wouldn't worry if you're not achieving perfect control, because nobody has perfect control. But what we're going to talk about in this tape is how to live in the present moment. What is it that you have to do to make your prayer and even your life experience a happier, freer, holier life? Because if we're able to focus on the here and now, rather than always being tormented about the past or the future, our life will be liberated from needless worry. So that's my hope for you, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Father, I worry about the future, about all the things that could happen. I even worry about things I should have done in the past, and certainly I wish I had planned my retirement a lot better. And I'm concerned about being alone. And I don't seem to get any comfort out of prayer.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I try to answer that, maybe Mary Carol, let me hear your view on this.
Well, parenting is such an awesome responsibility. I just don't know how I can measure up. I really worry about how I'm going to provide for my children, not just financially, but emotionally. it's a constant struggle for me to let go and let God. And I wonder, how can my prayer life help me cope with my worries?
How long have you been praying, Mary Carol?
Well, I'd like to say all my life.
And has it ever been of any help to you?
Oh, yes, it constantly is a source of help to me.
So in what way would it help you? In what way would you get some strength or consolation out of it?
Well,
here I am, by the way, answering your question. The answer is locked in you, and many times people ask questions, and the answer is right within them. It's just that they need to express the anxiety that they feel. But if you were giving advice to a best friend over the phone, you would start speaking from a deeper knowledge of faith. So answer the question. What answer would you give to Mary Carol, who just put this question before me?
well,
And how has prayer helped you?
it's made me realize very often that there is someone else who I can speak with, who can share my responsibilities, who can share my concern, and someone who's willing to take on my worries for even a little bit of time.
And yet, at the same time that you know that, there are feelings of worry and fear about the future.
Right.
So you've just described the human condition perfectly, and a faith perspective on the human condition. I often wonder what people do without faith. Because faith at least gives us a chance at changing channels, you know? If you have no supernatural dimension to your life, no hope for salvation, no hope for God's intercession, and you have to cope with what you're coping with, I should think it would be a tremendous, tremendous burden. So you have a great advantage. The problem is that God's intervention isn't like magical. It doesn't like Cinderella taps the wand and sprinkles and beautiful music comes and the problems go away. They don't. You have to fight through some of those problems. But you are, and you hit something, and you're afraid of loneliness. What you're talking about is fear of the future. Afraid of being alone, being sick, I haven't provided for myself, financial problems. You may not have financial problems, but you think if anything happened, you know, you could be wiped out. So could everybody else.
That's right.
In this day and age. So fear of the future is pressing on both of you. And I want to tell you that you will never, ever reach a state of nirvana where you will have no worries about the future. You have to realize you're a human being, and there will be worries. The problem that we have to face is not to let our anxieties and our worries dominate the present moment. And there is a lot you can do. Prayer can help a great deal. And I like to think of it in terms of a tape recorder. I mean, people who are anxiety prone have a tape going in their head all the time. It's the same basic worrisome tape. It's fear, 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 fear. And then they begin to get nervous, and then they react to their nervousness, and they get this panic attack and the vicious cycle, and it gets worse. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. And they really can go into a panic anxiety attack. And the best doctors will tell you, you have to get a hold of your anxieties. You have to spot it when it starts so that you don't let fears run away with you. And what I was saying at the opening of the show, the art of living in the present moment, is actually more than just pop psychology. What the spiritual masters tell us is that we should live our life in such a way that we give ourselves to God in the present moment in such a way as to make him happy. You see what I mean? This is a question of actually trying to put in another tape to stop the worrying that wears you down. Don't let the past drag you down. Don't let fear of the future take you down. But it's easier said than done.
Yes.
With respect to your particular problem, I don't know of any senior citizen who hasn't had the same set of worries that you have. But it takes time sometimes for our emotional life to catch up with our faith life. So it's possible for a person to say, I do trust you, Lord. I do love you, Lord. I do give myself to you, but I am frantically worried. Please help me. The two can go together. As you progress in this, the feelings will catch up. The feelings will subside. It's like in forgiveness. In forgiveness, the will says yes or no. Either you forgive or you don't. And when you forgive, that doesn't mean your feelings are all caught up yet, because you may still resent the person who hurt you. But because Jesus asked it, you're going to forgive and pray for that person, not hold that grudge, even though you'd like to strangle them. So you got this mixed feelings. The emotions haven't caught up yet. But as long as you remember your stable will choice, you're on the right track. And just laugh at those feelings. You're going to be all right. The Lord will take care of you. And when you have the faith and the hope, motherhood, I can't think of anything more daunting than trying to raise children in this world, in today's world. But the same is true. There'll always be challenges to your emotional instability. But your faith life will always bring that other tape into the picture so that you're not left to be bombarded by your emotional upheavals. Does that help?
No,
Yes, it
very
does.
much. Thank you.
Good, because
Certainly
we
does.
all have to work at it. It's certainly not easy.
How can I ask God for help when I can't help myself? I should be asking for help for others. But then every time I get stressed, I just hurt the ones I love by getting angry at them for no reason. I do apologize, but then start that endless circle again.
I wish I could pray about my problems, but I feel hurt and maybe a little resentful because it seems that things always go wrong for me. I regret many things that I may have caused to happen in the past, and I'd like to pray for forgiveness, but I just don't know where to start.
I understand the problem. Patty and Jan are both expressing feelings of guilt. And although it's easier said than done, the fact is that we cannot let the past drag us down. The idea of living in the present moment as best we can is an attempt to, in some way, insulate ourselves from those terrible thoughts about failing and about sinfulness and guilt. Guilt feelings can really tear you up. I read somewhere that 75% of the people who go to psychologists and psychiatrists go because of guilt feelings. And one of the great things we have in the church is the absolution of sin, where we really believe that God forgives and forgets. And it's a tremendous relief when your faith brings you to that. But the fact is, many times we have guilt feelings and we go to confession and we get absolution, but they persist. And so people feel as if they're unworthy, they're no good, there must be something wrong with me, even after they've been absolved. So this is a problem that is quite widespread. What I'd like to do is try to give you a few thoughts on how to deal with it. Remember, not only do we trust the future to God's providence, we have to trust the past to God's mercy. And this is a great act of faith. It's almost a will decision that I will trust God's mercy and forgiveness and love. So that when those thoughts come to bombard you and make you feel as though you're unworthy and as though you're being rejected even by God, who couldn't possibly love you and knowing what you've done, the fact is, feelings are not facts in these matters. God does forgive. He forgives and forgets. I'll tell you a little story about someone who had a lot of guilt about his prayer life. It's a kind of taken from the rabbinic tales and parables. It's a story of a farmer who was on his fields praying to God in his own way. And he had this unusual approach to prayer. He'd say, "Oh God, if I owned all the wheat fields in the world, I would give you all my wheat. That's how much I love you. And oh God, if I owned all the strawberry fields in the world, I would give you all my strawberries because that's how much I love you." And a rabbi came along and heard him praying in this way, and he said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm praying to God." He's praying to God about strawberries and wheat fields? That's no way to pray. And he gave him a book. He said, "Now look at my book. And this is my prayer book." And he said, "You see, this is what you're supposed to do in the morning, and these are all the rules you're supposed to follow, and then you flip over to this page, and then in the afternoon you pray this way, and then later on in the evening you pray this way, and this is the book. This is what will teach you how to pray." So the farmer took the book and thanked him. He said, "I'll be back to pick up the book, but I want you to practice." He didn't tell him that he couldn't read. So the book meant absolutely nothing. On top of that, the man was crushed, and he just had no life in him. In fact, he stopped praying altogether. He felt guilty about his prayer. He knew that it was unworthy. He knew that it was not good. And he knew that God wouldn't approve such a prayer because the rabbi told him that. And then one day God noticed that he wasn't hearing from this farmer anymore. He wondered what was wrong. So he sent an angel down to stand by him and to find out what happened. An angel came all the way down from heaven, came to him and said, "The Lord God has sent me to find out why you're not praying anymore." And he says, "Oh, I don't pray well. I know the Lord would never accept my prayer." "Well, how do you know this?" He said, "The rabbi told me." You know, this is a rabbinic tale, so they're using the word rabbi, but it could be priest, bishop, monk. It could be any authority figure guiding your prayer life. The rabbi told me that I'm not praying well. He says, "Well, how do you pray?" I said, "Well, I used to pray in the field and say to God, if I owned all the wheat fields in the world, dear God, I would give them all to you because that's how much I love you." And the angel says, "Well, what's wrong with that?" He says, "Well, the rabbi said it's not the way I should pray." He said, "Nonsense. That's the way the angels pray." He says, "You mean the angels pray that way?" He says, "Yes, come with me. I'm going to take you and show you. I can't bring you to heaven, but we're going to go to the edge of the universe. And if you listen carefully, you will be able to hear the angels praying." And so they did that, up through the clouds and through the solar system and out into the galaxies and to the edge of the universe. And there at the edge of the universe, he stood listening with the angel, and he could hear the choirs of angels singing in polyphony. "If we owned all the strawberries in the world, oh Lord, we would give you all our strawberries. That's how much we love you. That's how much we love you." And the man couldn't believe it, but he was filled with a new confidence. The angel then took him back to earth and told him, "Now you just go on and pray the way you've always prayed, and don't be afraid." And that's what he did. He would come out, and day and night, morning and afternoon, he would tell the Lord, "I am praying, dear Lord, to you. That's how much I love you. That's how much I love you. That's how much I love you." This is a prayer that all of us can take to heart because the Lord God loves us with so much love. And there's one other thing about guilt. That is believing that we are forgiven. This is a story of a mystic in the 15th century who was known to be in close contact with God, but the local bishop didn't believe that this was an authentic mystic. And so he had this woman brought to him, and she was very humble. And he said, "If you are really speaking to God, then I want to put you to test. When you come back, I want you to ask God the next time he speaks to you to tell you what my sin was. Before I became a priest, what was the sin in my life that almost kept me from becoming a priest?" The woman was quite surprised at this. But she left, she took his word, and off she went. A week later, she came back to him. He said, yes, he cleared the room so nobody'd be there. He wanted to hear this. And she said, I did as you instructed. I asked God what was the sin that the bishop committed before he was in the seminary. And she said, God stood there for a minute and he thought, and he said, "You know, I can't remember." So you see, God not only forgives, but he forgets. We don't have to worry about the past. Don't let the past drag you down. And don't think you're unworthy or not a good person, because if you want to give yourself to God, you are already praying with a pure prayer. Keep in mind the lesson of this particular tape, that the secret of sanctity and happiness rests in fidelity to the will of God as it is manifested in the duty of the present moment. Try to live in the present moment. Don't let the past drag you down. Bring a steel door down. Keep that invasion from touching your soul as best you can. You won't do it perfectly, but at least you know you can fix your mind on it. You are forgiven. And with respect to the future, pull down that same steel door and stop letting fear of the future ruin the present moment. If all of this comes crashing in on the now, the here and now, your life is going to be a nightmare of worry. Turn it over to the Lord. Trust the past to his mercy and the future to his divine providence, and you will be blessed. with a new kind of freedom and a new peace, which the Lord wants for you. The peace of God be with you always.